everyone, a very Merry Christmas to you all, and welcome back to a festive edition to the SBK Betting Podcast. And it's no doubt about it that other than the Cheltenham Festival, this is the best time to be a National Hunt racing fan, with the jumps racing on both sides of the Irish Sea, mouth-watering, albeit pretty jam-packed, Boxing Day through to New Year's Day, racing to savour. And with that in mind, for this episode, we're going to preview the 4 standout races at the earlier part of this period on the 26th and the 27th of December. So we welcome back James Millman, who saw yet another SBK winner come through last Saturday in the shape of Ansam, who was a welcome winner for the Evan Williams team at Ascot in the Silver Cup. A good result, James, at 7-1, so you're a man in form.
Yeah, very much so. And it was one, like I say, well-deserved, the Evan Williams stable after what happened to poor Silver Streak the day before. And Evan's been landing the big handicaps all season, Don Levant and Cool Cody as well. So the team are doing well. The secret reprieve bids to win the Welsh National again. But I've got to ask, it was Team Buzz this time last week. And unfortunately, we put the mockers on him. But how's he doing at the moment, Jess?
Thanks, James. Yes, a real blow for all of us. But Buzz is doing okay with his pelvis injury. It hasn't worsened, and standing very still, being a very good patient. Weight bearing on all fours, which, as you will know, is a big plus for a horse at this stage. But he is out for the season, sadly. But he will be back. We still need to find out whether he can stay 3 miles or not. And I'm absolutely certain that he'll be back on a racetrack to hopefully give us something to look forward to in the future. But thank you for your well wishes. But delighted also to have with us Ross Polo Neck Millar, not in a polo neck this time. He's in his Christmas gear, which is even better to see. This man put up Valtor as an each race selection last week, and the old boy ran a gallant race to finish 4th at an SP of 40-1. So Ross, great to see you in form as well in the festive spirit.
Yeah, looking forward to this coming week, Jess. Get Christmas Day out of the way, and then we can settle down and watch some proper racing.
Brilliant. Well, we'll get stuck into it. We're going to go to Kempton. Always the customary Boxing Day meeting at Kempton is absolutely captivating. We'll get into the King George a bit later on, but we're going to start with the 155, the 3-mile Kauto Star Novices Chase. Just the 4 runners. Possibly should only be just the 2 runners, according to the betting. It's Brave Man's Game who heads it at 10-11 with SBK as it stands. Ahoy Senor 11-10, T-Clipper 17s. Kilty Briggs 34-1. A good renewal in some respects, despite the field size, because these 2 horses at the top of the betting have proved to be the standout horses in their division. But it is 3 miles for the first time for Brave Man's Game, who has to reappear against Ahoy Senor, who beat him as a novice hurdler. That's possibly the only piece of form that we can come into it that suggests that Ahoy Senor can sort of has the essentially might have the better over Brave Man's Game. But it looks, Ross, that Brave Man's Game is an absolute natural over these fences. How do you see what could be tactically a fascinating race panning out?
Yeah, it's the matchup we've all been looking for, and I think you have to applaud the Lucinda Russell team for sending Ahoy Senor here. I think it would have been very easy to have skipped it and found something easier, and they've not. They've grasped the nettle and decided to take Brave Man's Game on. Brave Man's Game is certainly an exceptional jumper of a fence. This will be his first time in novice company. He's actually run against seasoned campaigners so far, has jumped impeccably the whole way, and it's just whether his impeccable jumping can find a chink in Ahoy Senor, whose jumping hasn't been foot perfect. I thought a bit too much was made of it actually at Newbury. I think he made a couple of mistakes, one at the water, which you couldn't hold against him really, and one at the open ditch first time, but he jumped it much better second time. And what I would say is that when he made a mistake at Newbury, he was very quick to get his feet down and get his landing gear under him. And even though he was making mistakes, he never looked in danger of falling. And I just think he's got simply a far bigger engine than Brave Man's Game. I think he's probably, for my money, the best horse in the UK. I absolutely love him. I think 3 miles round here, can he go right-handed? Well, you say the same thing about Brave Man's Game, So for me, they're the wrong way round at the prices. I'd have Ahoy Senor as a sort of favourite above Brave Man's Game. I think he's got a huge engine. I think he will probably serve it up to Brave Man's Game early. And I think you'll know very early on whether his jumping can cope with this test. I thought he was very good when he was on a decent stride at Newbury. He's improving all the way through. He's still very unexposed, and I think he'll comfortably beat Brave Man's Game.
Big confidence in Ahoy Senior, and look, it does look, James, like a horse that, you know, he's done nothing wrong. He's confirmed out this trip. Brave Man's Game, interesting as Ross was saying, has been running in sort of better kind of company than this, which is tough on a horse at an early stage of their novice chasing career, but has done nothing wrong in that respect. Looking at the way the race might shape out, they could try and take each other on. They're horses that have made all in the past. Do you think that's a benefit to a horse like Ahoy Senior, who we know will stay, or do you think that it's going to get the best out of Brave Man's Game?
I thought Harry would just track Ahoy Senior and maybe put him under pressure early. When they ran at Aintree, Ahoy Senior was out in front, having a very economical round, jumped extremely well. Whereas it all kind of went wrong at the start for Harry Cobden. He was keen going down the post, and then he jumped off actually right at the back of the field. He ended up 4 wide around the first bend. He was 3 wide for the first circuit, got stuck in behind horses as he entered the home straight, and he'd run at Cheltenham. There was 7 lengths between the pair. If there was trackers data, like you get in Maidan when you see those results come through, I think he would have covered nearly 4 or 5, maybe more lengths further in distance than what Ahoy Senior did on the inside, nearer the front. And I just felt the fresher horse got the better ride, was better placed, and Harry thought he'd pick up the pieces, and it didn't work out that way. And I think they're much closer even under that scenario last year. I've been impressed with Brave Man's Game of fences. Paul, both occasions he's targeted some good prize money races, some graduation chases where he's taken on second season horses. Fuso Raffles was put firmly in his place at Newton Abbott. A tight track, Brave Man's Game got Fuso Raffles out of his comfort zone, and he never looked as though he was going to be beaten. Itchy Feet's a good horse in his day, and he just, again, never really looked in doubt at Haydock last time. Whereas Ahoy Senior, he ran against seasoned handicappers on his first run, and it was 2.5, but he'd been put under pressure as they entered the home straight. And for me, he was beat when he came down and seated his rider 2 out, fit in the brief, the horse that won that race. There was 5 in a line, and he was probably only going about 3rd, 4th best when he came down. So for me, I think Brave Man's Game over the sharper track, he might just get Ahoy Senior off the bridle. And then I think the market's got it right myself. I'm team Brave Man's Game, although seriously respecting Ahoy Senior, who looks all over a chaser. He won that British point to point impressively. What's great though, we've got 2 British chasers, one in Scotland, one in England, that could actually take on the Irish. Like normally we talk about our best novice chasers, and they might be good enough for a place at Cheltenham, but both these 2 look like they potentially could be contenders. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm team Brave Man's Game.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that actually at this time of the year, we're looking across the water and seeing what the novice chasers are and what we have to fear. But actually these 2 could be the ones that could be really right at the top of the market in terms of Cheltenham when we get to it after Boxing Day. A lot of respect for both of them, but Brave Man's Game, I believe, just needs to find a little bit further than Ahoy Senior, but it's an interesting track. Very interesting track for Ahoy Senior. Is a different test than last time at Newbury, where he really relished it. But Ross and I both are Ahoy Senior and Brave Man's Game for James in a race that's so evenly matched, and the betting is a reflection on that. It'll be interesting to see if either of them tighten up when it gets to the day. But a great race to start off what's going to be a fascinating day, all leading up to the big spectacle that will be the King George at 3:05 over the 3 miles. 2-time winner Clanders Abo in the race, last year's winner Frodon, Gold Cup hero Manila in Indo, Asturian Forlonge is in here going very well when unseated at Punchestown, the John Durkin. We've got the Marsh Novice Chase winner Chantry House, and Lost in Translation back on track is also in here. Clanders Abo heads it at 3-1, Manila Indo 7-2, Frodon 9-2, Chantry House 5-1. Ross, I'll come to you first. I know this is a kind of race that you will absolutely love and relish. The really good feel about this King George. And as I've gone through, all these horses make it a quality addition, probably one of the best we've seen in some time.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jess. I think it's got a similar sort of feel to me as the long walk last week, in that there's plenty of high quality performers in there, but they would all have a question of some sort to answer. Is Minello Indo going to be quick enough and effective round this shite right-handed track? Clan de Obo, now this is a different prep for him normally. He'd normally have a prep run and then come on to this. This will be his first run this year, and he's 0 from 6 on reappearance runs. Frodon, for my mind, got a brilliant ride last year. Will they allow him to Bryony to sort of set the fractions she wants, or will they be a bit sharp to her this year? Can Chantry House step up? Can Lost in Translation back up what looked like a good run last time? He has sometimes struggled to do that. And then St. Calvados, now with Paul Nicholls, has had a wind up, has a tongue tie. Can he step up? And I thought the horse that perhaps the race might get dictated around was actually Asterion Phalange from Willie Mullins. He is a contradiction wrapped in an enigma. He's as mad as a box of frogs. He will jump right the whole way round. And I just wondered whether his presence in the field, he'll probably be fairly handy under Brian Cooper. They're not going to want to stack up behind him, and whether he might just allow Bryony to nip away in front if they can find a bit of traffic in behind him. So it's a very fascinating race. For me, I thought Clan de Obo had the least questions to ask, in that you wouldn't have any doubt that Paul Nicholls can get one ready first time out if he so chooses. And the 0 to 6 is a fact, but I think he's probably been undercooked for his reappearance run each time, because it was there to bring the horse on. So racecourse gallops, I would expect him to be ready. And I think he probably won't give Frodon as much rope as last time. They thought the debut run last season had taken the edge off him, which I don't think it will have. Obviously, this year he'll come here fresh. So for me, he seemed the most logical choice. But it's a fascinating race. And if the rain came, the more rain that comes, the better it's going to help Minello Indo. I just can't think he's going to be quick enough. You know, he was a 3-mile novice hurdler. So he clearly hasn't shown them a huge amount of pace at home. Otherwise, you'd have fancied they'd been in a 2.5-mile novice at Cheltenham rather than the Albert Bartlett. So for me, it was Clan de Obo. I think he's got the least questions to answer. And bag is third, King George.
Ross, yourself and James, I believe, on this very podcast, gave a very strong case for Frodon when he won at Down Royal, and he duly obliged. What is it about Frodon that makes you believe that he can't back that up? Because he's coming into this in great form. He's also beaten Candice Abo at this track this time last year. Is it all about the ride? I think he's so much more versatile than Candice Abo. You pick him in a battle any day.
He'll definitely battle. I just have a concern that the rain's going to come and take this ground a bit softer than good to soft, and I think good ground is important to him. And Clan de Obo last year was never at the races. He's since had cheap pieces applied. If Paul Nicholls thinks he can have him better, I'm prepared to go with that. And I just don't think Frodon will quite get the run of the race. And the other thing I'd say that I thought was very interesting in a recent interview with Paul Nicholls is that he feels very capable of getting them ready first time out. And I think Frodon was definitely absolutely cherry ripe ready to go at Down Royal. Whether it's quite so possible to bring him back and have him at his peak having done that, for me, is a slight question. So I would be not surprised to see Frodon win, and I would be very happy to see him win. But I thought Clan de Obo probably had a slightly better chance and has probably had a better preparation.
Yeah, and look, James, you know about preparing horses and trying and getting them right, match right for a particular race. And it is very interesting that this has always been the plan for Candice Abo. They know he's not a Cheltenham horse. They're likely that they probably will aim for Punchestown again and do what he did last year. The cheap pieces have been working wonders on him, which is interesting. We've seen cheap pieces fitted for the first time on Minello Indo as well for this race. So lots of changes and lots of nicks being applied to these horses to get them spot on. How do you assess it on the basis of what Ross has said and the overall picture of this race and how it will pan out?
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as Mr. Christmas himself, actually, for the King George. Frodon last year, none of them really wanted to get involved, and they did give him a very easy time up front. And it was only when St. Calvados was thinking about nipping up the inside, which Franny shut off quite abruptly, that she got banned for. That was the only time he really got put under any pressure, because it was Santini that was the one trying but failing to really serve it up to him on the front end. And there is a concern that might happen again if you are backing against Frodon, because I think the issue is Frodon's very easy to get beat, in the fact if you go too fast too early, Frodon will struggle to get into that rhythm. But the problem is you actually hamper your own chances. And I think last year, both Surname and Clan Zabo didn't particularly travel that well, but I think they were conscious of the fact that they didn't want to be detrimental to their own chances by trying to go Frodon's pace. And obviously being trained by the same trainer, I think if Paul, after the race, both of them had run their race and took each other on, I don't think Paul's going to be very, very happy. So I think it's difficult for Paul's jockeys to judge how to ride against Frodon, but it was just trying to find which horse would probably spoil his race as such. So there is a chance he might get it easy in the front end, but Kempton, it isn't really his track. He will jump slightly left-handed. He's not going to be as efficient as what he is around Cheltenham, and I think he is vulnerable. Clan Zabo, just like why we put up Frodon, I think, at Down Royal, that was his Gold Cup of the year. I think Paul was desperate to go to Ireland, get one over the Irish. He knew the race was going to suit him. Clan Zabo wasn't going for that race on that occasion. Nellerindo, he comes good at Cheltenham in March. He tends to just not plod along, but he doesn't look that special until he gets to Cheltenham. And that was the case at Down Royal, and I think it might be the case again at Kempton. He's got cheek pieces on for the first time. So they know they need to try something to sharpen him up. And I think he's vulnerable. I think he would have headed to Ireland, but understandably, Henry de Romed's got up Tard going for the established chase. There's no point those two taking each other on. So I think he's vulnerable. And I think the fact is Paul's one target for Clan Zabo at the start of the year. This is the King George. As Ross says, I imagine he's done some nice racecourse gallops at Wincanton probably, or somewhere local to get him spot on, but not take the edge off him like he did behind Bristol and My. We had a hard race in the Betfair last year. And again, I totally agree with Ross. He never really travelled in the race last year. And that just suited Frodon down to the ground because he just wasn't really challenged. So for me, Clan Zabo can do it this year. I think St. Calvados is interesting. We're perhaps neglecting him a little bit because I say Frodon cut him off at a crucial stage last year. And I think he might have an each way chance at a big price. And the other one, if he jumps Asterion Falange, he's got to be dangerous, but that jumping doesn't normally stand a test. And Chantry House, she's a fascinating contender as well. So for me, like you said in the pre-race build-up, this is probably the best King George you've had in quite a few years. You've had smallest fields where not a lot to consider. Here, if there was 5 or 6 of them that actually came home in front, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, St. Calvados 21-1. Asterion Falange at 6-1. I think is skinny enough. I'd want him to be slightly bigger. But Chantry House, as you mentioned, he's the only horse I just want to touch on quickly. 5-1. This is a different kettle of fish to what he experienced on his first run in open company last time out, which was a 2-runner race. For me, he seems a horse that might not be absolutely suited to a track like Kempton. We haven't really mentioned him at all, but he is very much high up in the betting. For the both of you, I'll go to you, Ross, quickly. Do you feel that have you overlooked him based on the fact that he doesn't have enough experience, that this is too much for him, that potentially that this is just a big stepping stone to essentially their long-term goal, the Gold Cup?
Yeah, all of that, and I just don't think he's good enough. His form of winning the Marsh, beating Fusel Raffles, that doesn't look all that at the moment. And then the Aintree race, I mean, if you're taking that literally, then he's superbly high class. But I think the race fell apart really. And even the horse that departed, the Kim Bailey horse that departed 2 out, hasn't come out this season and completely franked the form. So he, just like James said, he's one of the ones that if he won, I wouldn't be entirely surprised, but I think he has got to step up. And I think a 2-runner prep round Sandown, where he basically did his own thing, is probably not ideal coming into this, where they're going to go quick and give him a proper test.
Yeah, I think you're right that, as James is saying, I think the betting reflects that this is really open. 3-1, Clan Zabo, and then the first 5 in the betting, there's a point between all of them. It's really, really tight here. I think, though, by the time we get to Boxing Day, that those prices might change a lot, and I think Frodon might become bigger than what it is at 92 at the moment. I'm going to settle with him. I think he's always just slightly overlooked. Bryony will do her own thing and try and make sure that she can do what she did last year, and I think that she can get the better of Candace Abode. But the guys, Ross and James, are in agreement over him at 3-1 currently for the King George. So we'll see if he can make it 3 wins or if Frodon can make it 2 in a row. A really compelling case for Candace Abode and a really interesting overview on how this race might pan out. So we're gonna be really looking forward to that feature at Kempton. We're going to move on over to Ireland, because the racing over in Ireland is absolutely spectacular from the 26th to the 29th at Leopardstown. There's also plenty of racing down Royal at Limerick as well, but Leopardstown is where we're going to go, and we're going to look first and foremost at the 145 on the 27th of December, which is on Monday. That's the Paddy Power Future Champion Novice Hurdle. This was won by Appreciate It last year, and his trainer Willie Mullins has taken 5 of the last 6 runnings. It's all been about the Willie Mullins show in the build-up. He was responsible for 11 of the 14 entries. He's left 3 in, including the only mare in the field, Grandji. Our own Thurlow's own far outs in the race as well, as is Arctic Warrior. But the betting is headed by Mighty Potter at 9-4. Largely Debut is joint favourite 9-4. Grandji 3-1. 3-Stripe Life 6-1, Far Out 21-1, and Arctic Warrior 26-1. Interesting race. Shame that there isn't a bigger field. There normally is. Kilcart disappointingly not in the field himself, but largely Debut, Ross. I thought, considering he was massively overlooked in the betting, Kilcrut was all the rage in the run at Cork. He very much put him to one side, fair and square. Could this horse be the real deal? He's beat one of the best bumper horses in the country, in the UK and Ireland. But Mighty Potter's got more of the Grade 1 form. Quite an interesting race to assess. Yeah,
it is. And I think there's a very real danger that Largely Debut gets overlooked and his performance gets dismissed simply because he beat an odds-on shot in Kilcrut. The Mullins team didn't seem to make an awful lot of excuses for it, and it could just be that he's a very smart horse indeed. The concern would perhaps be that that was on soft ground at Cork, and we come here now onto good to yielding that they're watering in December, unbelievably, and whether he's just going to have the speed for this test. The one I came down on was the mare Grandji. Obviously with the £7 mare's allowance, which is very helpful in these Grade 1s. She had top class bumper form. She was only 6th in the Cheltenham bumper, but she was given an awful lot to do in a race where it paid. The winner and the second were both ridden prominently, and she came from a long way back. Her hurdles debut, she was odds on. It wasn't a race with a huge amount of depth, but her jumping was exceptional. She was very, very correct at all of them. She jumped straight, which I always think is a very important thing in a novice hurdler. To me, it says they've got a lot of confidence about what they're doing. She was very quick, very economical, and then showed a very smart turn of foot at the end. She would have won without showing a turn of foot, but it was nice to see her ability to quicken up. And I just thought on this good ground, a turn of speed might well be a very potent weapon to possess. Largely Debut might well have that in his locker. But he hasn't demonstrated it yet. He sort of grounded out at Cork. He just had a very nice high cruising speed, got them all in trouble a long way out. If this played out to be a little bit more tactical, which they can do around Leopardstown, and turn into a bit of a sprint for home, Grandji would be the one I'd want to be on at 3-1.
So James, it's interesting Grandji comes into this with that mare's allowance, which is a big benefit to her, but she is stepping up into this open company. Does the weight allowance give you enough to think that it's going to be a big advantage to her?
Yeah, I think it's like swings and roundabouts. You've got the mayor's option. Willie has a lot of mayors as well, so maybe he thinks that she's good enough to take on the geldings and keep some of his mayors back for themselves. She was very good against mayors last year in the bumper sphere. She did just struggle at Cheltenham, but Ross makes a very good point. The fact that she wasn't as well placed as our first 2 in that contest, and you can certainly upgrade her efforts where she finished 6th. I like her jumping at Fairyhouse. I think she's going to be a very, very good mare. I just really like Largy Debut at Cork because Henry de Bromhead didn't have to run a nice horse against Kilcrew, and I think there wasn't actually any excuses. Like Ross said, Team Mullins didn't really come out with much, and I think they've not declared him purely because they probably don't want to take him on again, and they might just want to get a win on the board with Kilcrew. He was just very impressive. He ground Kilcrew into the ground with 34 lengths cleared at third. He'd been working nicely, so clearly they're happy to go. Henry Bromhead only entered one in this race. I imagine he's got a fair few possible candidates, and straight away he was relying on this horse. And I just think he could be quite decent. Mighty Potter, he heads free that ran the Royal Bonds. They were third, fourth, and seventh. The fact that all three got beaten comfortably enough does suggest that their limitations have already been exposed a little. Whereas Lager W, we don't quite know how good he is. So again, like a lot of the races this weekend, I'm really looking forward to seeing how it pans out. And I think he could be quite nice.
Yeah, I think this race is all about whether that grade 1 form stacks up, whereas lots of people putting sort of lines through the Royal Bond that it wasn't really a truly run race, and actually Mighty Potter did best off that gallop. I don't know, I reckon 3 Stripe Life, who's in this race, might not even run if the ground does remain on the quicker side, as he was taken out of the Royal Bond last minute because of the ground. I will say a quick word on Far Out, who's not in this race for no reason. He will definitely appreciate a better gallop, and I like to hope that Largy Debut, who'd set that quick pace, who went off with Kilcrut last time at Cork, might do that. He just needs to learn to settle a bit better, and he could be competitive. But 6 runners makes it difficult to put in a word for for a betting proposition. I do think that Mighty Potter, a lot has been said about the way that race panned out for him in the Royal Bond, and I think if he gets if the race is truly run, you'll see a better Mighty Potter, and that's reflected in his price at 9-4. But really interesting, if Largy Debut does turn out to be a real good thing, which the Willie Mullins team will hope to see, then at 9-4, he could be quite a good bet. Will it be interesting to see how the betting transpires close to the time? But Ross is on Grangy. I will be with Mighty Potter, and James with Largy Debut at 9-4. So we'll head from Ireland over to Wales. We're doing a bit of everything in this episode, and we're going to have a look at the Welsh National on the 27th over 3 miles, 6.5 furlongs. We are at a stage before we've got the final declaration, so we're just a slight caution on whether all these will definitely hold their ground. But sadly, for a second year in a row, it will be behind closed doors. But last year, it gifted us with a thrilling winner with Secret Reprieve, winning despite the girth coming undone from the breast girth. It was brilliant jockeymanship from Adam Wedge. He'll be back to try and defend his crown. At this stage, currently Native River heads the weights, rated a cleared £10 of the next horse in the field. Former winner of this race 5 years ago when he won the race off top weight, but he was obviously 6th then. Filled with a lot of horses, fascinating contenders. I think it's a really nice field to this race, with the likes of Kimberlite Candy, Elegant Escape, Highland Hunter, a young and improver, and also the Welsh National Trial winner, I Will Do It. Ross, I'll come to you first. You love these types of races. As I mentioned, great to have Native River here. It sort of helps the weights for the horses lower down. Obviously, as I said, we need to sort of look at this with a slight word of caution based on not knowing who will run and who will get in. As it stands, what are you hoping will end up running in this race?
Yeah, the Christmas highlight for me is the Welsh National, as a proud Welshman myself. Native River really adds an element to this, in that a lot are going to be running out of the handicap, and a lot of very good horses are going to be running with very low weights. So a few of them are going to feel like they've been cut loose. Native River, for me, I didn't think he went with a huge amount of zest at Aintree last time. Maybe Father Time is catching up on him. I thought Elegant Escape was very interesting. He was 7th in a 2-mile hurdle race on good to soft ground at Sandown last time. That caught my eye. He's only going to have 11 stone 2, and pretty much has run under top weight the last 2 years every time he's run. Mighty Thunder would love the ground. Secret Reprieve is going to run off 10 stone, having won it last year. He is £10 higher, but he would have certainly won it with £10 higher last year. But the lack of a prep run is clearly concerning them. Maybe it's Evan Williams being a poker player. I just think it's a big ask to win without a prep run. So the two I came down on was former winner Potter's Corner. He won it in 2019 off a mark of 145. He'll effectively run off 132 here. And has been in the wilderness, but then bounced right back last time in the cross-country race at Cheltenham, finished second on ground that would certainly have been lively enough. And I think the thing to bear in mind is if Native River does put his best foot forward, he's a high-class horse, and I think a few of these ordinary handicappers, solid stayers though they are, might just struggle to travel in the early part of the race. Potter's Corner does have a touch of class, and I would expect him to be able to travel. He's 17-1 at the moment. I thought that was a nice each-way price, but I'd split my stake with another big-priced horse, thoroughly unexposed, the Ben Clark trained, the Galloping Bear. His Hunter Chase win at Fontwell reads very well. He loves soft ground, and he looks like he's only ever doing his best work in the last half furlong over 3 miles. He does tend to get a bit outpaced. A prep of falling over hurdles is far from ideal, but I think it's worth noting that at the time he was in some way, shape or form serving it up against Ask Me Early, who sadly misses this race through an injury sustained at home, but would likely have gone off favourite or very close to it. Just 3 runs over fences under rules for the Galloping Bear. He's a prolific point-to-point winner, and he'll definitely be staying on at the death. And 34-1, I thought was a big price.
Yeah, very interesting horse with only the full race, 4 races under rules. As you say, not ideal, but could have been worse, falling over hurdles at this track. Good to soft at the moment, the ground at Chepstow. We are expecting rain, which I think will be a big benefit for a lot of them, and it's probably helpful that the declarations are the 24 hours before, not now, so that they can keep an eye on that, James. And as Ross touched upon, Secret Reprieve coming into this not with a straightforward preparation, but again, this is their showpiece. They always want to win it. It was an absolute joy for them to win it last year. Couldn't get into the Grand National, but this is probably what they like to have a good run out of him so that he could get into the National later on in the season. How do you see him in this race, and do you think that at the price he is, he'll likely go off quite a short enough price again for this? Can you see any chinks in the armour?
Yeah, Evan is Mr. Negativity, but I do think he wanted to get a run into Secret Reprieve, but he doesn't run, I think, quicker than soft ground. So I think it is purely a ground consideration. They've not tried to keep the mark. So that's a negative. The big positive is he's got 10 stone again. So he sneaks in off bottom weight. There's only 13 maximum that are actually going to be running off their correct mark. So it's a bit of an old-fashioned Welsh National with Native River taking part. And I concur again with Mr. Christmas, because he didn't travel anywhere near as well. Bridget on Protectorat was swinging away a long, long way out, and she ends up taking it up down the back straight purely because Native River couldn't actually keep going at that kind of pace. So I think they said that it might be his last season, and then they're dropping in grade slightly. It probably increases the chances of a few of them in the fact that so many are going to be out of the handicap. Highland Hunter got that £4 penalty for the Sandown win. That probably isn't quite so bad now. Most of his rivals are going to be running badly in at their weights, but he probably does need to step up. And despite being 5 out of handicap, I do think Venetia Williams is a strong hand. She's had a fantastic season already, and this horse is in the mould of a Venetia chaser, would enjoy any rain that falls. I thought one Cosley at Carlisle in his return at the end of October. She's kept him fresh for this contest. She'll be a little bit annoyed that he's 5 out of handicap, so it does mean he's £12 higher than what he won off at Carlisle. But I thought it was interesting, at this meeting last year, he was second to Ask Me Early in that novice handicap chase, which is often a good trial for this kind of contest. Ask Me Early would have been a pretty warm favourite if he'd been able to take part. Unfortunately, that nasty schooling fall he had means he doesn't run. So I just thought, hold that taut. He's around about 8-1 at the moment. I think he's a good each way bet. You look at those form figures, he's always there at about 2-3, 2-3, and a nice win on his return. So I think he's a cracking each way contender in what's a brilliant race. And like I say, it's such a shame it's going to be behind closed doors, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless.
Yeah, as I say, Venetia Williams just excelling at the moment. All our horses seem to be in great form. Charlie Deutsch, you'd imagine, will pick this horse over Achille, or Ashil, the horse that I really like. I think might have needed the run last time out when he sort of had a bit of a funny race, but he stayed on all right to take 5th in the Beecher. And again, is another horse who has nothing on his back at 10-1. So I thought that was eye-catching. But Charlie Deutsch who gets a really fine tune out of him, possibly won't be on him this time, as that's the only negative I would imagine for him. Outside of that, I will do it 13-1. He needs one horse to come out at the moment. This is the Welsh National Trial winner, who Sam Thomas has managed to get spot on after some issues he had with this horse last season. He possibly, if he doesn't go in, there'll be other races that they'll find for him. But I think with only one to come out, he might just squeeze into it, and he'll have nothing on his back as well. And he was really eye-catching when he won at this track, as I said earlier on in the month. So I will do it 13-1, Killy 26-1, but there's plenty of value around. This is the race to get really stuck into in terms of a betting proposition. And as James is saying, hold up to 8-1, Potter's Corner 17-1, and the Galloping Bear, really interesting profile for a race like this for Ross at 34-1. The Proud Welshman, Ross, I learn something new every day. But look, guys, outside of this, there is so much we could talk about in terms of the racing over the next week or so. Plenty of fascinating contenders running throughout the country in Ireland, UK, Wales, wherever you want it to be. So I wanted to take this opportunity, and I come to you, Ross, first to give us some hidden gems that are in that Father Christmas sack of yours.
So the nap would come in the 220 at Leopardstown, the Racing Post Novice Chase. Fernie Hollow, I'm sure, will be warm order as the only horse to beat Bob Ollinger over obstacles. But I think he'll have some job to give £13 to Riviere de Tel. She's got plenty more experience than him over fences. She's looked a very, very good jumper. Fernie Hollow looked a bit guessy at a couple for me. A fairly quick turnaround for him off a long layoff. And I think she'll upset the favourite in that. And then my next best each way in the 210 at Wetherby, the Roland Merrick handicap chase. The old boy who'll be 13 come the new year, taking risks. He loves heavy ground. He's a pound below his mark when he won the Sky Bet. Blinkers replace the usual cheap pieces. And I'd love to see Nicky Richards in tears again after the race for all the right reasons. And I think at 25-1 or thereabouts, he's a very big price if the rain comes and the ground goes heavy at Wetherby.
Yeah, you're right. Taking risks, 25-1, a brilliant price for that. Wonderful horse. Riviere de Tel 13-8, and that will be a really interesting matchup, that race there. Plenty outside of that, so great to have Wetherby included in the preview. James, where are you looking for your nap?
Yeah, I could put one that came up in the tracker actually. Edith Elton. I saw this on win at Wincanton just over a year ago. Won on the rescheduled Welsh National Day, won quite nicely, and then didn't seen until November. Went travelling nicely at Exeter before blowing up, entering the home straight. Now he was beat 30 lengths, so you might get a decent price. So he's back to Wincanton, where he's 2 from 2 of the fences. He runs in the 203 on Boxing Day, and like I say, there's loads of betting opportunities on Boxing Day, and he's a nice each way option that might just go amiss with all the better quality racing. I think he might have been teed up for Wincanton, and any rain that falls will really be in Edith Elton's favour. So he's a nice each way option for Boxing Day.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. A lot of very good races, good betting opportunities get missed in the absolute hoo-ha and drama of all the better quality races. But there's so many good betting opportunities in and around on the slightly lesser meeting. So Wincanton, Edith Elton for James is one to note. I'm just going to put up Facile Vega in the bumper at Leopardstown on Boxing Day, the final race of the day. I recently at a Thurlow event asked Willie Mullins for one unraced horse that has not graced our race courses yet for him to give us. His son Patrick Mullins gave us Appreciate It 2 years ago before he ever ran, and they gave us Facile Vega, a son of Quevega by Walk in the Park, who's just been a phenomenon as a national hunt sire, and Facile Vega will have his first run. Patrick Mullins already docked up in the bumper at Leopardstown on Boxing Day, so worth keeping an eye on for that. As always, new SBK customers get their first £40 in bets refunded as cash if they lose, but none of these bets are going to lose. We're going to have a fantastic Christmas, plenty to look forward to, and as always, great to have Ross, Father Christmas Millar, with us. Thank you, Ross. I hope you have a brilliant Christmas. I'd imagine you'll be donning that suit throughout the next 5, 6, 7 days. Perhaps there'll be plenty of others that are hidden in that cupboard of yours as well.
Plenty of costumes for the kids for Christmas, that's for sure.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to hoping that all these naps and selections come good for you. James, I'm not entirely sure what you've dressed up in. I'm arranging
Scrooge is what I've dressed up as. I hate Christmas. Wait till 26th.
Sorry, everyone. James is our Scrooge, our lump of coal today. But hopefully he'll turn that coal into some good things over the week of Christmas. Best of luck for the week. We'll be back to preview some more festive racing this time next week. So don't forget to like and subscribe and listen in again, as we'll be back and hopefully reviewing some great racing and previewing some more to come. So thank you very much for joining us again.